was wrong, I messed up, and now you're gone.
How's it going, everybody? It's your favorite Silver 4 Gregor here. Welcome to this annotated video guide on how to use the weapons of Counter-Strike Global Offensive. There are a lot of freaking guns in this game, and Valve Software's rationale for continually adding them to this day remains a mystery. But what is also a mystery to a lot of newcomers to this game is when and how to use these guns. To that end, that is what this video will provide, and we'll even talk about the shitty ones. You can watch the whole video from start to finish, or you can click the timestamps in the comment section below to go through different sections of it. I'm going to try to go through these weapons in the way that you would, or should anyway, go through a typical competitive Counter-Strike game. That is, starting with pistols, then SMGs, and shotguns, i.e. eco guns, rifles, etc. Alright, introduction's over. Let's start with pistols. Let's start on T side with the Glock 18. The Schlock 18 is crap. This is mainly because its damage is atrociously bad, but you're gonna have to use it whether you like it or not, unless you want to rush B every round with the Tech 9. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but we'll get to that later. The most effective way to use the Glock really is to get up close and personal, pull the trigger a whole bunch, and go for headshots. Its fatal headshot range is considerably lower than that of the CT pistols, so straight firing with USPs at long range should be avoided where possible. Take advantage of the gun's high magazine size and high rate of fire, get close, and aim for the head. The water gun's burst fire mode is an interesting feature, but one that takes a little bit of tact to use properly. You can use the recoil to easily dink opponents, but I think the main purpose of the burst fire mode is to quickly dispatch of enemies that you know are lit. If a teammate calls out a guy that's taken a lot of damage, switch to burst fire and aim for the body. Let the recoil do the work for you. The most commonly seen counter to the Schmock 18 is the USPS, which stands for Universally Superior Pistol, SADU. It has perfect first shot accuracy while moving just like its counterpart, the P2K. And honestly, these pistols are, for all intents and purposes, interchangeable, with some minor differences. The USPS has a silencer, the gun's quiet, and it doesn't leave tracers, which can make it difficult for the enemy to determine where they're getting shot from. However, the P2K has one more bullet in its magazine than the USP, as well as more magazines in reserve. The playstyle for both of these guns remains the same though. Take advantage of the long-range first-shot headshot lethality these guns have on round 1. Strafe side to side, and engage the terrorists at range, where their weapons won't be as effective. Next on the list is a very popular eco pistol, the P250, not to be confused with the P350. It's considered by many to be the best eco gun. It's super cheap at $300, and it's capable of one-tapping opponents in the head, even if they have armor at close range. Think about that for a second. You get some well-placed shots with a P250 on a guy with an AK, they just lost at least $2,700. And you get an AK yourself. Oh, how the turntables. Buy this gun on safe rounds when you want grenades. Can't go wrong with it. Except on round 1 if you're on CT. Never do this, please, okay? If you get the P250 on round 1 as CT, you're basically getting a gun that does the same damage as your other pistols. The advantage of the P250 is its armor penetration, and players won't have helmets on round 1. So you might as well go for one-taps with the free guns you already have. Remember, the P250 is an eco gun through and through, but a damn good one at that. Now for a gun you can buy on round 1 CT if you want, though keep in mind you might be a bit of an asshole if you do. The 5.7. It's called the 5.7 because the average amount of kills you'll get with this thing in a given life is 5 through 7. Basically, the 5.7 is the best gun in the game. Kind of. It has a fatal headshot range of 365 meters with a helmet and has strong damage while being easy to control anyway, so you can see how this thing is pretty daggone good for a pistol. At a price of $500, no less. It's easy to use too, with a recoil pattern that basically goes up in a straight line. The 5.7 is a great gun to buy if, say, you've just lost on CT and everyone buys when they're not supposed to. It also goes great with an op or a scout. The alternative CT players have to the 5.7 is the CZ75 Auto, a gun that used to be overpowered as shit, then nerfed, but isn't exactly trash nowadays. It still has its usage. It does about the same damage as an M4A4. Obviously, the caveat being that its magazine size is very small, and it only has one to spare. What's this gun good for? A friend of mine once said, quote, "You hide in the gayest fucking spots possible, and then you spray enemies in the back. Then, you pick up their gun. It's a powerful little bugger that, at the same price as a 5.7, can take down enemies with armor and rifles pretty quickly. Use it defensively." In the place of the 5.7 and the CZ for the terrorists is the Tech 9. The Tech 9 has a fatal headshot range of 379 meters, and is for all intents and purposes an expensive Glock, but an effective Glock at that. It's got a high fire rate, it's spammy, and with 33 damage and 90 armor pen, this thing can chew through enemies. It's very popular among Russians for rushing B site, B meaning Bliat. It's a potent sidearm that can be used to rush at the beginning of the game, but can also make for a handy cleanup gun if you run out of ammo in your primary. Now, as for a gun, or rather set of guns, with a high rate of fire that isn't particularly useful, the dualies. The dualies are a polarizing pair, and I'll admit, reenacting a John Woo film and deathmatch with these things can be pretty fun, but they're just not that great. Low damage, low pen, yeah, you can spray people down, but why not get a Tech 9, or a 5.7 instead? Get a Tech 9 or a 5.7 instead. Okay, so we've talked about the basic pistols, but what about the hand cannons? We'll start with the Deagle. 1-Deag, Juan-Deag, whatever you want to call it. This is the most skill-based gun in the game, and naturally, it's a gun a lot of people like to think they're good at using, including myself. But I'm not very good at using it, and chances are you're not either. Its main attribute is its ability to one-shot anyone at any range with a headshot, but this requires, obviously, precise aim and patience. These are two things that most Counter-Strike players seem to lack. The recoil bloom of the Deagle after firing is absurdly big. You'll have to stop an aim before you fire with it in order to use the Deagle without making yourself look like a total dingus. Practice, practice, practice. That's all there really is to it. Aim for the head, crouch, pace your shots. You'll find the rhythm to fire accurately in terms of taps with this gun soon enough. I like to think of it as a Zweihander, a really big-ass fucking sword that requires a lot of muscles to use properly. In the case of Counter-Strike, those muscles are your brain muscles. Hard to pick up, hard to master, but a capable sidearm in the right hands. Good for eco rounds. What about the other hand cannon though? The R8? Well, it's high noon.
It's high noon somewhere in the world.
I honestly have no idea what to say about this thing. Valve adjusted it a little bit to eventually incorporate it into the competitive meta, maybe, for some reason. It's not like they ever really needed to add it in the first place. You can one-tap people with it. It's a little easier to use in the Deagle. That's kind of it. I mean, you've all used the R8 before. There's a little bit of a delay when you use the primary button, and it's accurate, but you can alt-fire with it, and it's really inaccurate, but you might hit something with it. I don't really have anything else to say about it, because as it stands, it's probably going to look very different in the competitive meta whenever Valve gets around to it. Also, it's a revolver with 8 shots. Alright, I think you all have a general idea of what to expect from the pistols. Now let's talk about what you usually get after pistols. SMGs. SMGs are typically bought on round 2 after a win by CT side or a bomb plant by T side. On T side, you really can't go wrong with the MAC-10. Like Little Mac himself, the MAC-10 is short in stature compared to the Mike Tyson-esque AK, but it still packs a mean punch when used appropriately, especially on round 2 when the enemy team probably isn't going to have armor. It's also a gun that's easy to use for new players. Like I said, if you win a T round, you can't go wrong with it. As for CT, their equivalent is the polarizing successor to the TMP from Counter-Strike of old, even though it's basically the same gun. The MAC-10 has a higher fatal headshot range than the MP9, but I want you to focus on the purpose of these guns more than anything else. They both fill in the same role as cheap SMGs to get after first round wins. Go into a recoil control map like this one and get the patterns of the individual guns down. Recoil is drawn upwards, and you can often walk headshots on enemies. I really like these guns, they're usually my go-to picks for round 2. Now, a gun with comparable price that you can also pick up on round 2, but you can also use for force buys is the UMP-45. The Übermensch Powerful 45 is a very cost-effective and very easy-to-use assault rifle. The UMP-45 is a very cost-effective and very easy-to-use SMG.
Okay.
Its damage and armor pen are very high for a weapon of its class, super easy to use. The recoil pattern is even more predictable than that of the MAC-10 or the MP9. Go for headshots and you'll down enemies in no time at all, really. Out of a couple other guns I'd recommend newbies to get good with, this is one of them. Another gun that's easy for beginners to use is the P90, a more reliable cheese gun than the other ones I'll bring up in a moment. The P90's price point makes it essentially compete for space as a cheap big primary weapon against the Galil and the FAMAS. It's almost exclusively a force buy gun. It's a good gun to buy if you feel like you're having a bad game and just really want to kill shit. Its higher price tag might make its purchase somewhat questionable to others, but that's a lot of bullets in the magazine. A good running gun weapon that, when paired with teammates also using it, it can wreak havoc in close quarters, and is really good for rushes. Unfortunately, what we've discussed thus far is where most of the competitive usage in the submachine guns comes to an end. I'll start off with the better of the remaining, the widely chagrined MP7. The MP7 is a weird gun. Its main calling cards are super low recoil and the ability to two-shot headshot opponents. Keep in mind that's going to be the only way you ever get kills with this thing, because the body damage with it is absolutely atrocious. It's a very balanced weapon besides this, but it's more expensive than the UMP, and it has low mobility for an SMG. Its ease of use makes it a common pick for people in competitive games, but I can't say you don't have better options that are going to give you more bang for your buck. Still, if I had a choice between an MP7 and this piece of crap, the Pei Bison, I'd pick the former. The Pew Pew is a meme. Maybe buy it if you win first round and have a lot of money and you're absolutely certain that they're gonna make a stack push on B. But if that's the case, why don't you just get an MP9? If you really need a gun that can fire 64 bullets, go ahead. But other than that, just steer clear of it. It's garbage. You know what other good eco guns there are? Shotguns. Let's talk about them. Alright, so shotguns are interesting eco guns because they give you higher kill rewards. At the right place at the right time, they can help you bounce back from a money shortage. As Big Sean once said, last round took an L, but this round I bounced back. Let's start with the most commonly used shotgun, the Nova. The Nova has relatively long range for a shotgun, but you gotta rely on headshots to reliably get kills with it. It's a good force buy option if you don't want to get a UMP and you figure you're gonna be fighting indoors. Capable of being purchased by CT and T side, it may see better usage for you on CT side, because by their nature, shotguns are very good defensive weapons. So with good aim, you can reliably one-shot enemies in the head as they pass by. Keep in mind, one of the Nova's biggest weaknesses is its ability to not penetrate anything. That's what she said. It can't pen surfaces of any kind whatsoever, even cardboard, as you can see here. Just a little something to keep in mind. From that point, shotguns become faction-based except for one that I'll get to later. On T side, you get the sawed-off shotgun. Oh god. Don't buy it. Don't do it ever. And don't go into the fucking comment section on this video and go, Gregor, it's cheap, it's cost effective. Whatever, dude. Get a Nova. But JW uses it. Are you JW? No. If you were global, you wouldn't be watching this video. So just calm down and buy a Nova instead. Okay? Cool. Okay. It has a bullet range of 650. The Mag 7 has a range of 1400. The Nova and the XM have ranges of 3000. Not to mention, this thing isn't even as accurate as other shotguns. It has absurdly low range and damage. It's not that accurate. And it's on T side, when you have to get into the opponent's face first to even use it. It's like the Glock of shotguns. Would you ever buy a Glock on purpose? No. So don't buy a Glock gun. Glock gun? Shot Glock? Just don't. Don't sawed off. But you know what you should? You should Mag 7. The Magnificent 7 is a great gun that's well worth the additional price compared to the Nova or the sawed off. But you're on CT side, so you can't buy a sawed off anyway. On force buy rounds, it's a great alternative to cheaper rifles. It also suits the CT well because, as a shotgun, like I said, the CTs can easily take advantage of its defensive capabilities. It's a really good gun to practice with because it will very easily net you kills if you have good aim. Holding banana from behind sandbags on Inferno is a pretty good choke point in particular, or the usual shotgun rush into lower tons on Dust 2. The most expensive shotgun in the game, though, compared to the Mag 7, is a little bit more difficult for me to recommend. I am, of course, talking about the XM. The XM Auto Shotty is, well, it's awkward, to say the least. It has amazing stats, yeah, but it has a lot of problems, too, like a lack of pellets. And a big price tag. It has high bullet range for sure, and you'll undoubtedly kill stuff with it, don't get me wrong. But is it really worth it compared to other options? I feel like you can get the same kinds of kills with something else. It's okay. I'd rather get a Nova or a Mag 7 with grenades. Anyway, that's it for the shotguns. Now we're gonna get into the real meta and potatoes of the game. Get it? The rifles. The guns you'll be using for the majority of a Counter-Strike game. Okay, so the first rifle we'll talk about is arguably the first gun you should learn how to use in this game, because it's the best one in the game. The Avtomat Kalashnikova 1947, the AK. Okay, so the AK is basically the best gun in Counter-Strike. It's a gun that requires you to put practice into it, though, to get good with it. It will always, always, always kill opponents with 4 shots. It also has perfect first shot accuracy, and will one-shot kill those enemies with headshots from any range whatsoever. It has a lot of recoil, but see, here's the thing. This is Counter-Strike, and the way you counter recoil in this game is by counterbalancing it with the mouse. The AK might have a lot of recoil, but it is predictable recoil, as in, you can memorize the spread pattern and counterbalance it to get clean sprays at range. So how do you do this? Well, there's a number of ways you can do it. The way I did it was by loading up a pre-fire practice map with bots, like I mentioned earlier. I'll leave a link to the map in the description along with the other maps that you can use to, practice. In my experience, there are a couple of elements involved in spraying with guns in this game well, at least for me anyway. The first thing is a custom crosshair. Now, like I said with the other maps, I'll leave it all in the description of the video, but basically you go into this workshop map and you can either pick a crosshair that's used by pro players, or you can make one of your own. As you can see with the crosshair that I have here in the spray kills, what I kind of try to do is get the first corner of it, I guess, the first little, right angle, square, corner, I'll highlight on the screen, right, to the left and up. I basically take that and I move in a diagonal pattern down to the right. It's something that's a little bit difficult to describe to someone without them actually putting it into practice themselves. So look at the recoil map, look at the crosshair map, experiment, and find what works good for you, because what I do isn't necessarily going to be the best thing for you. Here's a description of the AK's recoil pattern from someone who is much, much, much higher ranked than I am.
Alright, fucking picture a 7. Flip that 7 upside down. You've got the beginning of the AK spray. Now flip the 7 upside fucking down, and then you do the beginning of that, right? When you come to the end of that 7, you go back to the right. There you go. That's the fucking AK.
The way I look at it, the AK is like a lawn sword. It's big and heavy. You gotta have muscles to use it properly. And not just that, you have to develop good technique with it too. But let me be clear, if you practice enough, you will see results.
Alright, there we go. Alright, I'm on.
Why did I just... It's fine, it's fine. So I just have this... Oh.
Lit 91.
Last one truck. Last one truck. Last one.
Terrorists win.
Okay, don't go away. Carry jungle.
Anyway, that's the AK. So when do you buy this thing? Basically all the time, unless you want to get an op. Want to get an SG instead, do you?
So to your right.
We'll talk about that in just a minute. The only thing about the AK is that it's on the terrorist side, so what do the counter-terrorists have to compensate? They have the advantage of being defensively oriented and the ability to hold angles, but they also get some good rifle choices of their own. In fact, they get 2. We'll start with the gun nobody used until the other one got nerfed. The M4A4 is basically an AK-47 that has a smaller spray and slightly less damage. If you shoot an enemy with even 1 shot in the legs, you'll take them down in 5 shots as opposed to 4, and it doesn't give 1-shot headshots. So you might look at this thing and think, well, what the heck? Why are the CTs so handicapped? Well, they aren't really. The M4A4 kicks ass. Using the A4 is very similar to the AK. The spray is predictable and in a similar pattern. It's a gun that suits an aggressive CT player pretty well because it works really well at close and medium ranges. You can often let the recoil with this weapon do the work for you to score quick headshot kills by aiming for the neck and letting the gun just kinda walk up. Getting the rhythm of this down, like anything else, will take some practice. As for the alternative to the A4 that was objectively better than it until it was nerfed a while ago, the A1S This gun is suited to a more defensive style of play than the A4. The main advantage of playing the A1 steak sauce over the A4 is its low recoil and the ability to hit people at range. It also has a silencer, which can make it difficult for enemies to tell where they're getting shot from if you catch them by surprise. I have never played a game where that has helped, but hey, it's something. This comes at a cost though, as the magazine size of the A1S is lower than that of the A4 at 20 rounds as opposed to 30. Utilizing this gun effectively doesn't really require you to do too much with the recoil spread, as it's quite marginal compared to the AK and the A4. Just pull down just a tiny bit, just a smidge. The A1S does well in lawn corridor types of angles like cat and lawn on dust 2. That's basically all I need to know about these CT rifles, though. Are you a more aggressive player? Are you good with the AK? Can you pull off frags like no one's business? Well, you might like the A4. If you're a more defensive player, you might like the A1S more. The more important thing, ultimately, than having some silver 4 on YouTube tell you what to do, is to try it for yourself. We now get to that part of the video that you all knew was eventually going to happen, where we talk about the COD guns. Which COD gun should we learn about first, huh? Vote now on your phones. Just kidding, we're going to talk about the AUG first because it's better. The UG is better, in my opinion, for a number of reasons. 1. The fact that it has a scope makes it suited to sitting patiently and holding long choke points. This is something that is suited to playing on the CT side anyway, so it just kind of falls into character. The gun is easier to control than the SG and has comparable damage to other CT rifles, except for one little thing, its ability to get lethal headshots at close ranges. The AUG is a great gun. It can pick off headshots on terrorists moving along cat, for instance, and it becomes a lot easier than if you were using an A1S or an A4. The scope is very useful for that, but there's just one problem with the AUG, and it's the nature of the scope. Picture the AUG like a spear as opposed to a sword, right? It has a very, very specific usage. You gotta keep an enemy at a distance, that's where the weapon just generally works. If they get a little bit too close with their sword, sure. If you're good, you can totally jab them in the neck or something, but that takes a little bit of practice and precision. The AUG's recoil pattern, in my experience, also just isn't quite as easy to manage as the A4 or the A1S. The AUG is good. It's just different than the other rifles, and in my opinion, you shouldn't be trying to use it like the other rifles for this reason. It's also more expensive than the A1S or the A4, and you should keep that in mind if you find your team bleeding money over the course of the game. Alright, so what about the other COD gun? Oh boy, here comes the downvotes. This is the SG, or shitty gun. Fuck this thing. Why? I'll tell you why. Do you know what you can do with an SG that you can do just as well with an AK? You can get the AK. Okay, so let's talk about why people use this thing. 1, it has a scope. Alright, dude, cool. I guess. Yeah, I know. It can one-tap headshot. Okay, cool. You know what else can one-tap headshot? An AK. But Gregor, the SG can pick off people at longer ranges and get those headshots because the scope. Cool, dude. If you're picking off one-shot headshots with this thing all the time, good job. You know what else you can do that with? But see, here's the thing. That's not even what I don't like about this gun. The one-shot headshot thing would be nice if the SG didn't have this one problem: recoil variance. What is recoil variance? Well, recoil variance is basically just a fancy way of saying that the recoil pattern of the gun is somewhat unpredictable, unlike the AK-47, which will be the same spray every single time you fire. You can memorize an AK spray. You can't memorize an SG spray. Not to mention the gun has 2 separate spray patterns, one when you're in the scope, and one when you're out of the scope. Its movement speed is also slower than the AK, which makes it difficult for you to keep up with your teammates. But Gregor, I can take sights with it by beaking corners for people who are holding angles. You know what you could have done with an AK?
4 HP.
Bought grenades. Because the SG is more expensive. Use flashbangs. My main point then, right? The shitty gun isn't even a shitty gun. It's just not as good as the AK. But besides that, the AK is a longsword. The SG is a dual-bladed sword. Were dual-bladed swords ever used in anything aside from movies? No. It's difficult to use, and the reward you get for handling this gun's difficulties isn't worth it compared to the AK. The AK works with me. When I use the SG, I feel like I have to wrestle it to get what I want out of it. So should you buy an SG? Yeah, sure. If you want to tilt people and make them rage. Don't get me wrong, this gun will do just that. But seriously, why get an SG when you're
There's
godly
3 on
with the
A, so I
AK?
might-
That's my only point. Whoo-wee!
I'm gonna slide
That was a
into
tough one. Okay, feel free to thumbs down the video now. What's next? Another mediocre gun, the Galil. The Galil AR is just weird. It's a cheap rifle that serves as an alternative to the AK when you don't have quite enough money for it. It's okay, and there are certainly worse options, like the Bison. But remember that little thing that we talked about when I was bitching about the SG? Recoil variants? Well, the Galil has a lot of it. It still has pretty decent damage though. It'll kill enemies in 4 to 5 shots, but the thing about it is, the recoil is just odd. It has this kind of downward but also random side to side sort of pattern that makes it somewhat difficult to control. Sometimes you'll get a spray on people and get the kill. Other times, some bullets will go wide, and then you'll lose a gunfight. It certainly feels a little bit annoying when that happens. You could have bought a scout and grenades, and not have that random element happen to you. Or any number of guns. You can sometimes get lucky with headshots for this reason, though. The cheap rifle option that the CTs have, in my opinion, though, is a totally different story. The FAMAS is a good eco gun that, despite some flaws, deserves its price. One of those flaws, like the Galil, being somewhat weedy damage and lower time to kill compared to other CT options. Its recoil pattern is somewhat easier to control than the Galil, though, because the recoil pattern is a little bit smaller. It still has a little bit of recoil variance, though. It can one-trigger pull headshot kills, if aimed well enough with the little burst fire mode, but it's a bit tricky. It definitely requires practice and good crosshair placement, and I wouldn't recommend doing it at super long ranges. In fact, I wouldn't even bother with it at all. Just stick with its full auto mode. It's an eco gun, you get what you pay for. Keep in mind, though, that it has a smaller 25-round magazine, and more importantly, it can't fire underwater. Did someone say literally unplayable? Alright, we talked about weapons with scopes. One of them was worth picking up, the other one, in my opinion, wasn't. Here are some more guns with scopes that are definitely worth picking up. The snipers. The Scout is a $1,700 sniper rifle capable of getting one-shot headshot kills on a sniper rifle user that spent $400,750 plus armor plus grenade. It's also super light, and you can outpeak people at long range simply by just moving quickly and killing them with flicks. It's awesome. It's a bargain price that's cheaper than either the Galil or the FAMAS, and it can take down oppers in skilled hands. This gun's an excellent weapon to hold down flanks with on eco rounds. Pair it with a good sidearm, like a 5.7, you get a versatile kit, and you didn't break the bank. It's a good gun to practice with. Once you start to get good with it, you'll notice just how useful it is. And if you like using the Scout, you might like using its bigger brother, the AWP. The AWP is just that gun, you know? It's capable of one-shot killing anyone from the body up at any range. It's a power weapon through and through, and with a really big price tag. But every team needs a good AWP to do good. Its presence in the game is impossible to ignore. You're not invincible with an AWP, though. Counter-Strike is a skill-based game, and like anything else, using this gun takes practice. But trust me, at least being serviceable with it is a great Counter-Strike skill that will save your ass plenty of times, even if you don't plan on being the AWPer for your team, per se. The AWP completes the holy CSGO gun trinity that in my eyes consists additionally of the AK and the Deagle. And now the guns that will start flame wars faster than saying 2 genders on r/science. The auto snipers. Here's the thing about the auto snipers. These are solely late game weapons. If you're buying these things at like round 5, you're either whooping the enemy's butt or you're trolling. At that point in the game, it's more economical to get other guns. These things are late game weapons solely, and you're gonna feel really stupid if you get P250'd in the head and you just spent $5,000. These things are strictly late game weapons, and they have high price tags for a reason. 2-shot kills at any range with body shots, 1-shot headshots, high fire rates, basically no recoil. There's practically no difference between the terrorist one and the counter-terrorist one. You'll use them for the same reasons. When you do use them to seal the deal on a match, the enemy team will complain a lot. Proceed to laugh at them and then kill them a lot. Okay.
I'm gonna go way back when.
That's the last of the useful guns in the game. Yep. I guess the video's over. I mean, like, what the fuck? What do I say?
Just a Negev. Did you get the Negev? Oh, you goddamn idiot.
The Negev costs $2,000. If you fire it a whole bunch, it turns into a laser beam. If you get 4 of them on the same team, you get the combined rate of fire of a Warthog minigun. It costs $2,000. The Negev is a beast that can keep the enemy at bay with its pinpoint suppressive fire, provided you have the luxury of time to gain control over it.
Who writes this shit?
$2,000, $150 kill reward. Hey Gregor, what about the M249? Oh. Well, you know, it's the most expensive gun in the game. And it's an AK with an unpredictable recoil pattern and it costs a lot of money. It's the worst AK in the game. What about the Zeus?
Like, boost him up, boost him up, boost him up. Boost him up, boost him up. Come on, you gotta go behind him. If I didn't say boost him up, you would've won.
Just a rush. They have an ult this time.
This game's not valid.